Hey there, welcome back to Story Slices, where we slice through the best Reddit tales just for you. Let's dive right into the first story. The first one is the Tittle story, and it starts like this. I never thought I'd be thankful for my obsession with trees, but life has a funny way of working out sometimes. My name's Mike, and I've lived in the Oak Ridge subdivision for nearly 20 years now. It's a nice enough place, quiet streets, well-maintained lawns, and a homeowners association that usually keeps to itself. That is, until they decided to declare war on my pride and joy, a majestic 200-year-old oak tree that stood proudly in my front yard. I inherited this house from my grandmother, and with it came the massive oak that had been planted by her great-grandfather. This tree wasn't just any old oak, it was a piece of living history, predating the Civil War and standing tall through 2 world wars. Its sprawling canopy provided shade for picnics, its sturdy branches had supported tire swings for generations of kids, and its gnarly roots created a natural playground for local wildlife. Every morning, I'd sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, admiring the way the sunlight filtered through its leaves. It was more than just a tree to me. It was a connection to my family's past, and a silent guardian of our property. But apparently, not everyone saw the beauty in this ancient giant. The trouble started when our homeowner association board, led by the insufferable Karen Thompson, decided that our subdivision needed more parking spaces. Their brilliant solution? To tear down my oak and pave over a chunk of my front yard for a new lot. I first caught wind of their scheme at the monthly homeowner association meeting. I usually skipped these snooze fests, but my neighbor Bob had insisted I come along. They're planning something big, he'd said, and I've got a feeling you're not gonna like it. As I settled into an uncomfortable folding chair in the community center, Karen stood up, her perfectly coiffed blonde hair bouncing as she gesticulated wildly. "Ladies and gentlemen," she announced, her voice dripping with false enthusiasm, "I have exciting news. The board has unanimously approved a plan to increase our property values and solve our parking woes in one fell swoop." My ears perked up at this. Our subdivision had never had issues with parking before, so this already sounded fishy. Karen continued, "We'll be constructing a new parking lot right here in Oak Ridge. This will not only provide ample space for visitors, but also boost our curb appeal." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some nodded in agreement, while others looked skeptical. I was firmly in the latter camp. "And where exactly is this parking lot going to be?" I called out, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. Karen's smile faltered for a moment before she plastered it back on. "Well, Mike, I'm so glad you asked. We've identified the perfect spot, that unused space in your front yard." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Unused space? You mean where my oak tree is?" "Oh, that old thing?" Karen waved her hand dismissively. "It's a safety hazard, Mike. Dead branches could fall at any time. Besides, it's blocking the view of the neighborhood. This is really for the greater good." I stood up, my chair screeching against the floor. "That old thing is a 200-year-old oak tree. It's healthy, it's on my property, and it's not going anywhere." Karen's smile turned icy. "I'm afraid you don't have a choice, Mike. The homeowner association bylaws clearly state that we have the right to make improvements to the neighborhood as we see fit. The decision has already been made." I looked around the room, hoping to see some support, but most people avoided my gaze. A few, like Bob, looked sympathetic but said nothing. "This is ridiculous," I sputtered. "You can't just come onto my property and cut down my tree. I won't allow it." "The work crew will be there next Monday," Karen said, ignoring my protests. "I suggest you make peace with it, Mike. Change is good for everyone." I stormed out of the meeting, my mind reeling. There was no way I was going to let them destroy my tree. But as I walked home, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I knew how powerful homeowner associations could be, and Karen seemed determined to get her way. That night, I barely slept. I spent hours researching homeowner association laws, tree protection ordinances, anything that might help me save my oak. By morning, I had a plan. I'd fight this through proper channels, get a lawyer, file for an injunction, whatever it took. But Karen and her cronies had other ideas. I woke up Monday morning to the sound of chainsaws. Jumping out of bed, I ran to the window, my heart pounding. There, in my front yard, was a team of workers already halfway through cutting down my beloved oak. "No," I shouted, throwing on clothes and rushing outside. "Stop, stop, you can't do this." The workers paused, looking uncertain. One of them, a burly guy with a handlebar mustache, stepped forward. "Sorry, sir, but we have orders from the homeowner association. This tree's coming down." "Like hell it is," I growled. "This is my property, and you're trespassing. Leave now or I'm calling the police." The man hesitated, then shrugged. "Look, I'm just doing my job. You'll have to take it up with the lady in charge." He pointed down the street, where I saw Karen standing with her arms crossed, a smug smile on her face. I marched over to her, fury building with every step. "Karen, what the hell do you think you're doing? You have no right to be on my property, let alone cutting down my tree." She didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "Oh, Mike," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "We've been over this. The homeowner association has every right to make improvements to the neighborhood. Your tree is a safety hazard and an eyesore. We're doing you a favor, really." "A favor?" I was practically shouting now. That tree is worth at least $100,000. It's been in my family for generations. Karen's eyes widened slightly at the mention of the tree's value, but she quickly composed herself. Now you're just being dramatic. It's a tree, Mike. Get over it. I pulled out my phone. I'm calling the police. This is illegal, and you know it. For the first time, I saw a flicker of worry cross Karen's face, but before I could dial, there was a tremendous cracking sound from behind me. I turned just in time to see my magnificent oak, the tree that had stood for 2 centuries, come crashing to the ground. The noise was deafening. Birds scattered from nearby trees, and I swear I felt the earth shake. As the dust settled, I stared in disbelief at the fallen giant. Its massive trunk lay broken, its once proud branches splintered and scattered across my yard. I felt like I'd been gutted. That tree was more than just a plant. It was a piece of my family's history, a living link to generations past. And now, because of one woman's petty power play, it was gone. Karen's voice broke through my shock. Well, that's that, she said brightly. Don't worry, Mike. We'll have this all cleaned up and paved over in no time. You'll love the new parking lot, I'm sure. I turned to her, my voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what you've just done, Karen. But I promise you, you're going to regret this. She rolled her eyes. Oh, spare me the dramatics. It's done. Move on. As Karen sauntered away, I stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of my beloved oak, and made a silent vow. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, meetings, and mounting frustration. I contacted every local authority I could think of, the city's Parks Department, the Environmental Protection Agency, even the Historical Society. While many were sympathetic to my plight, they all gave me the same response. Since the tree was on private property and had been removed by the homeowner association, there wasn't much they could do. But I refused to give up. I knew in my gut that what Karen and the homeowner association had done was wrong, and I was determined to make them pay, literally and figuratively. My breakthrough came when I reached out to an old college buddy, Steve, who had become an environmental lawyer. After listening to my story, he was practically salivating at the chance to take on the case. Mike, he said, his voice crackling with excitement over the phone, what the homeowner association did wasn't just morally wrong, it was straight up illegal. They had no right to enter your property without permission, let alone destroy a valuable tree. We're talking serious damages here, my friend. For the first time since the oak came down, I felt a glimmer of hope. So you think we have a case? A case? Steve laughed. We have a slam dunk. I'm talking trespassing, destruction of private property, violation of local environmental ordinances. The list goes on. Plus, given the age and value of that oak, we're looking at some hefty punitive damages. We spent the next few weeks building our case. Steve dug into the homeowner association bylaws and local regulations, finding multiple violations. We gathered statements from neighbors who had witnessed the tree's destruction. We even brought in an arborist to assess the value of the lost oak, who confirmed that it had indeed been worth well over $100,000. All the while, Karen and her homeowner association cronies continued with their plan as if nothing had happened. They cleared away the remains of my oak and began preparing the area for paving. Every day, I had to watch as they desecrated what had once been a beautiful, living piece of history. But their smug attitudes only fueled my determination. They thought they could just roll over me, that I'd eventually give up and accept their improvement. They had no idea what was coming. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we were ready. Steve filed our lawsuit against the homeowner association, seeking damages for the destroyed tree, legal fees, and a halt to any further development on my property. The day the homeowner association was served with the lawsuit papers was one I'll never forget. I was out in what remained of my front yard, half-heartedly raking leaves, when I saw the process server walk up to Karen's door. Even from across the street, I could hear her shrill voice rising in indignation. What is the meaning of this? She screeched, waving the papers in the air. Her eyes locked onto me, narrowing in fury. You did this, didn't you? I leaned on my rake, unable to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. Just improving the neighborhood, Karen. Isn't that what you're all about? Her face turned an alarming shade of red. This is ridiculous. We had every right to remove that eyesore. You'll be hearing from our lawyers. I just smiled and went back to my raking. Let her bluster. I knew we had them dead to rights. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. The homeowner association, predictably, tried to fight the lawsuit tooth and nail. They argued that their bylaws gave them the right to make changes to the neighborhood, that the tree had been a safety hazard, that I was being unreasonable and hindering progress. But Steve was relentless. In court, he systematically tore apart their arguments. He presented evidence showing that the homeowner association had never conducted a proper safety assessment of the tree. He brought in experts who testified to the oak's health and value. And most damning of all, he proved that the homeowner association had violated its own bylaws by failing to get proper approval for such a major project. Throughout the trial, I could see Karen and the other homeowner association board members growing increasingly uncomfortable. Their confident smirks gave way to worried frowns as witness after witness testified against them. The turning point came when Steve called me to the stand. As I sat there, facing the judge and jury, I didn't try to hide my emotions. "Can you describe what that oak tree meant to you, Mr. Johnson?" Steve asked. I took a deep breath, thinking back to all the memories associated with that tree. "It wasn't just a tree," I began. "It was a part of my family's history. My great-great-grandfather planted it when he first settled this land. I grew up climbing its branches, having picnics in its shade. It was there for every major event in my life, birthdays, graduations, even my wedding. Losing it? It's like losing a member of the family." I saw several jurors nod sympathetically. Even the judge seemed moved. "And did you give the homeowner association permission to cut down this tree?" Steve continued. "Absolutely not," I said firmly. "I made it clear at the homeowner association meeting that I did not want the tree removed. They ignored my wishes and trespassed on my property to cut it down without my consent." Steve nodded, then turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, what we have here is a clear case of overreach and illegal action by the homeowner association. They destroyed a piece of living history, a valuable and beloved tree, without permission or proper cause. They violated their own bylaws and my client's property rights. This cannot be allowed to stand." The homeowner association's lawyer tried to counter, painting me as an obstructionist standing in the way of community improvement, but his arguments fell flat in the face of the evidence we'd presented. After 3 grueling weeks, the case finally went to the jury. The wait for their decision was agonizing. I paced my living room, alternating between hope and dread. What if they sided with the homeowner association? What if all of this had been for nothing? But I needn't have worried. After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. As the forewoman stood to read the decision, I held my breath. In the case of Johnson versus Oak Ridge Homeowners Association, we find in favor of the plaintiff. I let out a whoop of joy, unable to contain myself. Steve clapped me on the back, grinning from ear to ear. The judge had to call for order before continuing. "The jury has awarded damages in the amount of $450,000 to Mr. Johnson for the loss of his oak tree, associated property damage, and legal fees. Furthermore, the homeowner association is hereby ordered to halt all development on Mr. Johnson's property, and to fund the planting of new trees throughout the neighborhood as restitution." I could hardly believe it. We'd won, and then some. The look on Karen's face was priceless, a mix of shock, anger, and daunting realization that she'd monumentally screwed up. As we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed around us. One thrust a microphone in my face. "Mr. Johnson, how do you feel about the verdict?" I thought for a moment before answering. I'm relieved and grateful that justice was served. But this was never about the money for me. It was about standing up to bullies who think they can do whatever they want without consequences. I hope this sends a message to homeowner associations everywhere. You work for the homeowners, not the other way around. In the weeks that followed, the repercussions of the trial rippled through our community. Karen and the entire homeowner association board were forced to resign in disgrace. A new board was elected, one that promised transparency and respect for homeowners' rights. True to the judge's order, the homeowner association had to fund a massive tree planting initiative throughout the neighborhood. I insisted that a young oak be planted in my front yard, in the spot where its ancestor had stood. It wasn't the same, of course. It would take centuries for this sapling to match the majesty of the old oak. But as I watched it being planted, I felt a sense of continuity, of a wrong being made right. The large damages award allowed me to make some improvements to my property that I'd been putting off for years. But more importantly, it let me set up a fund for the ongoing care and maintenance of the new trees in the neighborhood. I was determined to ensure that future generations would be able to enjoy the beauty and shade of mature trees just as I had. As for Karen and her cronies, they became pariahs in the community. I heard through the grapevine that she was trying to sell her house and move away, unable to face her neighbors after what she'd done. Part of me felt a twinge of sympathy, but only a small part. Actions have consequences, and she was finally facing hers. One sunny afternoon, about a month after the trial, I was out watering my new oak sapling when I saw Bob, my neighbor, approaching. He looked sheepish, scuffing his feet as he came up my driveway. "Hey Mike," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For not speaking up at that homeowner association meeting, I should have had your back." I studied him for a moment. Bob had always been a decent neighbor, if a bit of a follower. "Water under the bridge," I said finally, offering him a smile. "What matters is that things are changing around here for the better." Bob nodded, visibly relieved. "You're not wrong there. Listen, some of us were talking, and we were wondering if you'd consider running for the homeowner association board next election. We could use someone with your backbone." I chuckled, shaking my head. "Thanks, but I think I've had enough homeowner association drama to last me a lifetime. I'll leave that to you younger folks." As Bob headed home, I turned back to my little oak sapling. It wasn't much to look at yet, barely taller than me, with just a handful of leaves, but I could see the potential in it. With care and time, it would grow into something magnificent. The whole ordeal had taught me a lot about standing up for what's right, even when it seems like you're fighting a losing battle. It had also shown me the power of community. Once people saw that it was possible to stand up to the homeowner association, they found their own voices. The atmosphere in the neighborhood had changed. People were friendlier, more engaged, more willing to look out for each other. Over the next few years, I watched with pride as our neighborhood transformed. The new trees grew steadily, their canopies spreading wider each season. Children played beneath their branches, just as I had done under my old oak. The sense of history and continuity that I'd feared lost was slowly being rebuilt. The lawsuit had made headlines beyond our little subdivision too. I started getting calls and emails from people all over the country who were dealing with similar homeowner association issues. Some wanted advice, others just wanted to share their stories. I did what I could to help, pointing them towards resources and encouraging them to stand their ground. One day, about 5 years after the trial, I received a particularly interesting call. It was from a producer at a major news network. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her voice buzzing with excitement, "we've been following your story since the trial, and we'd like to feature you in a documentary we're making about homeowner association overreach and homeowner rights. Would you be interested in participating?" I was taken aback. "A documentary? About my tree?" The producer laughed. "Not just about your tree, Mr. Johnson. Your case has become something of a rallying cry for homeowners across the country. It's inspired people to stand up to unfair homeowner association practices. We want to tell that story." I thought about it for a moment. If sharing my experience could help others, wasn't that worth doing? "All right," I said finally. I'm in. The filming process was an eye-opening experience. The crew interviewed me, of course, but they also talked to my neighbors, legal experts, and even a few reformed homeowner association board members from other communities. They filmed the new trees growing in our neighborhood, contrasting it with footage of treeless, cookie-cutter subdivisions elsewhere. As I watched the finished documentary, I was struck by how much larger this issue was than just my oak tree. All across the country, people were struggling with overbearing homeowner associations that seemed to have forgotten their purpose. My story, it seemed, had given some of them hope. The documentary aired on a Sunday night. I invited some of the neighbors over to watch it with me, including Bob and his family. As we gathered around my TV, I felt a mix of nervousness and pride. The film didn't pull any punches. It showed the ugly side of homeowner association overreach, with stories from all over the country of homeowners being bullied and harassed. But it also showed the power of standing up and fighting back. My case was presented as a turning point, a David versus Goliath story that had inspired others to take action. When it was over, there was a moment of silence in my living room. Then Bob spoke up. "You know, Mike, I never really got why you fought so hard over that tree, but seeing it like this, I get it now. You weren't just fighting for a tree, you were fighting for all of us." I felt a lump in my throat. "I was just trying to do what was right," I said. As my guests left that night, each of them thanked me. Some even apologized for not supporting me more during the original conflict. It was a bittersweet feeling, gratifying to be appreciated, but sad that it had taken so long for people to understand. The documentary had an impact far beyond what I could have imagined. In the weeks and months that followed, I heard about homeowner association reform efforts springing up all over the country. Homeowners were demanding more transparency, more accountability, and more respect for individual property rights. Some states even began considering legislation to curb homeowner association powers. It wasn't all smooth sailing, of course. There were still battles to be fought, still homeowner associations that tried to overstep their bounds. But there was a sense that the tide was turning. People were waking up to the idea that they had the right to stand up for themselves, even against seemingly powerful organizations. As for me, I found myself becoming something of an unofficial advisor to people dealing with homeowner association issues. I started a blog to share my experiences and offer advice. It wasn't the retirement I had envisioned for myself, but it was fulfilling work. One crisp autumn day, about 10 years after the original incident, I was out in my front yard, raking leaves. My oak sapling wasn't so small anymore. It had grown into a sturdy young tree, its branches reaching towards the sky. It would never replace the ancient oak I'd lost, but it was beautiful in its own right. As I worked, a car pulled up in front of my house. A woman got out, looking around uncertainly. She was probably in her mid-30s, with a determined set to her jaw that reminded me a bit of myself. "Can I help you?" I called out. She approached, a hesitant smile on her face. "Are you Mike Johnson?" I nodded, leaning on my rake. "That's me." "I'm Sarah," she said, offering her hand. Well, this might sound strange, but I wanted to thank you. Your story, your fight, it inspired me to stand up to my own homeowner association when they tried to force me to tear down my grandmother's rose garden. We won our case last month." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. "I'm glad I could help, even indirectly. How did you find me?" Sarah laughed. "It wasn't hard. You're something of a legend in homeowner association resistance circles. I was in the area for work and thought I'd stop by, see the famous oak tree neighborhood for myself." I gestured around at the trees lining the street, their leaves a riot of red and gold. "Well, here it is. Not quite as impressive as it once was, but we're getting there." Sarah's eyes were shining as she looked around. It's beautiful. And knowing the story behind it, it's inspiring. You showed that one person really can make a difference. As we chatted, more neighbors came out of their houses. Word spread quickly that I had a visitor, and soon we had an impromptu gathering on my front lawn. People shared their own stories of standing up to the old homeowner association, of the changes they'd seen in the neighborhood since then. Looking around at my neighbors, friends, really gathered under the young oak trees, I felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The loss of my ancient oak had been painful, yes, but from that loss had grown something beautiful, a stronger community, a movement for change, and a legacy that would outlive any single tree. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my lawn, I realized that this moment, this community, this sense of justice served, was worth more than any amount of money or any single tree, no matter how old or majestic. It was a reminder that sometimes, the greatest victories come from the most painful losses. Sarah left as the gathering broke up, but not before extracting a promise for me to keep in touch. As I waved goodbye to my last guests and turned back to my young oak, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I reached out and touched the smooth bark of the tree, feeling the life pulsing beneath it. "You've got big shoes to fill," I murmured, "but I think you're up to the task." And as the last rays of sunlight filtered through its leaves, I could almost imagine I heard the whisper of its ancient predecessor, approving of the new growth and the changes it had inspired. The old oak was gone, but its spirit lived on, in this young tree, in our reformed community, and in the countless others who had found the courage to stand up for what's right. In the end, that was a legacy far greater than I could have ever imagined. And it all started with one tree, one stand, and the determination to fight for what's right, no matter the odds. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow at Story Slices.